How to stop being mean to yourself in 4 easy steps. So welcome. If you are in a position where you are mean to yourself all the time and you don't know how to stop, if you find your mind is mean to you all the time and you don't know how to stop it, then you are right where you need to be, because today we're going to discuss how to stop that from happening. And my big claim, the big sweeping claim that I'm making here, is that it's actually not that big of a deal to stop the cycle of self-abuse. It's generally thought to be more complicated and difficult and arduous than it actually is. It's rather straightforward, but even though it's straightforward, that doesn't necessarily make it easy. So this video is going to highlight the most straightforward and simple pathway to make this happen. I'm going to highlight some of the traps that we can fall into along the way. And my genuine intention for you through this video is that you have a simple map that you can use to bring the cycle of self-abuse to an end. And my big invitation for you is just to simply follow along as we go through this and invite the possibility that it actually can be that simple. Because like the biggest objection that we usually have going into a discussion such as this is, hey, Brent, like there's no way it can be easy. It can't be that easy. I've been in this loop for years and decades, and you telling me that we can just unwind this and just a 15-minute or a 20-minute video? And all I'm saying is, let's be open to the possibility that you've been missing a vital piece of information that only now is available. Now, why would you want to listen to me? Like, assuming we're just meeting for the first time, you haven't seen any of my other stuff. Who's this Brent guy and what authority do I have to offer? Well, I've been in the self-development, self-awareness space for 25 years, reading books, going to courses, taking workshops, contemplating, learning, journaling, trying things out for myself, doing this all myself, going from a place of utter self-despair, self-doubt, self-hatred, and moving to a place where there's deep self-trust and groundedness in myself. That was very hard won. I'm a professional coach of almost a decade, and I'm currently studying to become a counselor. So in addition to all of the self-development stuff and the consciousness stuff, it's spun together to create this clarity that could be useful for you. So that's my big claim. And while we're into introductions, if you are interested in the one-on-one work that I offer, because I offer what are called core energetics sessions that allow me to go much deeper with you and allow you to become much more liberated in your psychology, check out in the description. You'll see a link for that where I tell you all about that, and that might be of interest to you too. But without further ado, let's get into it. Let's discuss the 4 easy steps. So an opening caveat here is that these steps that I'm going to give you are not like things necessarily that you have to do. They are more so things for you to accept from me. So I'm going to tell you 4 things basically, and I'm going to qualify them. I'm going to explain why they're true, and I'm going to tell you my thought process behind them. And ultimately, my invitation for you is to accept them, is for you to either accept them on faith from me, which would be fine, or to think them through yourself, to just see if you can find any error or any problem with any of them. And if you do, let me know. Write something in the comments. I would be very grateful to hear it. But I don't think you will, because I think you will discover as we go that these are ironclad. They're extremely strong, and it's really hard to find a problem with them, I think you will find. But nevertheless, that's what we're dealing with. 4 things to accept and basically internalize. That's it. Okay, good. Now we can get on with number 1. So number 1 is this. When we talk about you being mean to yourself, and when we talk about your mind or yourself being mean to you, we are discussing the same thing. This is the first thing to accept, is that whatever you give to yourself, you are going to receive back from yourself, because you are not 2, you are 1. And it's like any abuse that you put into the mirror is abuse being reflected right back at you. Now, sometimes this happens instantaneously, but sometimes there's a bit of an echo where if you say something really scathing or introduce a very hostile energy to yourself, it may come boomeranging back to you in the next few minutes or hours or even days. And if the gap is long enough, then you won't know what happened. You will have forgotten the original event and you're like, whoa, mind, why are you being so mean to me all of a sudden? My mind is such an asshole, people sometimes say. But that will be why, because there was something that you offered to yourself originally and it's coming back to you, because there's only, at the end of the day, in the final analysis, there is only you. That's number one. How are we doing? The only argument that could possibly be made there is that there's spirits or entities, that are outside you, that are offering hostility or other people. But really, like, let's just talk about, say, like if a person is mean to you, the words or the vitriol or the negativity becomes maintained when you believe it and continuously offer it to yourself after that original bully has left the situation. So it still comes out in the wash. So that's number one. Number two, if you offer abuse to yourself, negativity to yourself, hostility, if you're mean to yourself, for whatever reason, it will be because you believe that there is a reason that you should. So one more time, if you're mean to yourself, it's because you think that you should be mean to yourself, that there's a reason why you ought to be mean to yourself, that there's some sort of benefit or there's some sort of negative outcome that's being prevented by you being mean to yourself. There are thousands of different ways to go about this. So like one is, let's say, maybe you hold yourself in non-forgiveness about something. Like, you did something that turned out to be a mistake and you got a bad outcome. A lot of people are mean to themselves because they think, well, I need to be mean to myself, otherwise I won't learn my lesson. I can't just forgive myself. I can't just let myself off the hook, because if I did that, then I would get away with it and I wouldn't learn, right? This is one example. Another example would be if you are, let's say you're struggling with motivation, you think, well, I need to really insult myself and really light a fire under my own butt so that I stay motivated. If I'm easy on myself, if I let any slack in the leash, if I'm too forgiving, and if I give myself too much space, then I won't try. I won't be inclined to keep going. So my being abusive to myself is a form of motivation. Well, I can't think of a third one, but whatever. But you see what I mean? There's a sense of the negative psychology prevents bad things from happening or causes good things to happen. So there's a belief that you hold in, this is my claim, that you think that there is a reason to be mean to yourself, to be not nice to yourself. And your job now at this stage is to figure out what it is. And so if you are one who journals, then open up a new page in your journal or on your laptop and ask yourself, what is the benefit of being abusive or harsh or nasty to myself or unforgiving? Why do I do this? Why do I hold myself? Why do I second guess myself? Why am I critical to myself? What is the perceived benefit? And then just become aware of it. And then we advance on to step 3. Now here's step 3. And I think this is the one where we will get the most arguments and the most hang-ups. So let's be very careful as we move through this. Your reasoning, here's my statement, your reasoning for being abusive to yourself, for offering negative psychology to yourself, is wrong. Any reason that you have for being less than loving to yourself, less than respectful to yourself, less than kind to yourself is wrong. Now, speaking personally, I have put in a lot of time with this. I actually spent a cumulative a handful of hours, say 4 or 5 hours, where I was really looking for situations where being less than loving to myself and less than kind and respectful to myself is called for, is necessary. And there aren't really any. And I say it that way because you could create like an absurd situation where it's like, you could pay me maybe $500,000 to be mean to myself for a minute. And it's like, okay, fine, I'll do that, right? Like you can come up with these sort of fringe examples, but you otherwise, outside of that, you won't find any. And here's the reason. This is a really important way of thinking about it. When you are abusive to yourself, at its worst, it becomes debilitating, paralyzing, and it makes it so that you can't think or act or do anything. It just takes you out of commission. And I've been there. I've been lost in such negative thought, in such deep depression about it, that I couldn't do anything useful. I couldn't get myself to come out of bed. I was just useless. And there was a depression that kind of piled on top of even that made it even worse. And there was a runaway feedback loop. Absolutely terrible. So that's what happens at its worst. But then even at its best, negative psychology and self-abuse, it can maybe motivate you to get out of bed and do something, right? Where you say to yourself, oh, you're such a loser. If you don't get out of bed, you'll be the biggest loser ever and nobody will love you. And that could get you out of bed, but it only gets you the minimum benefit. It is the worst form. It is the lowest quality form of motivation. It is the coal-powered form of motivation, as opposed to solar-powered motivation, which comes from different forms, which comes from self-love and self-respect. And there's a whole other thing, and we can get into that later. It's not really in the scope of our conversation today, but just it's enough to say that it can give you benefit, but it's the worst form of benefit, and it creates the most amount of internal pollution as you go. And even arguably, the amount of internal pollution or the internal suffering that it creates actually negates the benefit that you would otherwise get from the results of that motivation. So I wonder now, as I speak to you, if you're willing to accept that from me, at least in theory. And don't get me wrong, we're going to get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts about how to kind of change how you feel. That we're going to save that for the last step. You and me, we're just achieving sort of an intellectual agreement about this, just a rational agreement that self-abuse and any psychology that supports self-abuse is just clearly wrong. It's simply wrong. And so if you hold that kind of psychology, that kind of belief system, you can say authentically that you hold an incorrect belief system. And are you willing to do that? Are you willing to state that you hold an incorrect belief? Good. And so that brings us to the fourth and final step. So having gone through this journey, now we are curious about how to remove psychology that supports self-abuse and replace it with psychology that supports self-love and self-respect. So here is what I think is the most crucial and yet most absent insight. So this is the thing that we don't know. This is making its way into popular culture, but it's at the beginning stages and it's not well known enough. And this is an idea that everybody needs to know in order to understand how to replace negative psychology with positive psychology. There's a difference between having a negative thought be present in your consciousness and believing that thought. These are two different things. Prior to this distinction, we think that any thought that appears in our mind is something that we believe. And then we freak out because we go, oh, go away, thought, go away. Why do I keep thinking this thing? I have to stop thinking this thing, right? Do you know what I'm talking about? We've all been there. There's a difference, again, between a thought appearing in your mind and you actually believing that thought. And when we understand this difference, then it means that we can allow thoughts to be in our mind without making it into a problem. Because if a thought appears in our mind and we believe it, then we fix that thought into our psychology and then that becomes our lives. But similarly, if a thought appears in our psychology and we argue against it and we react against it and we say, go away, or we say, no, it's wrong because this, and that, and you start talking to this thought and describing why it's wrong, that's actually still a covert way of believing this idea because you feel threatened by it. Remember, we only debate against something that we feel threatened by. By contrast, if I said to you, hey, did you know that Earth has 3 moons? Not just 1, but 3. Did you know that? How does it feel for me to tell you that? Do you feel like you need to react? Do you need to argue with me? Do you need to push back? Do you need to tell me that I'm wrong? You don't really have to do that. It doesn't create an emotional upset in you. If anything, you'll just want to say, good luck with that, Brent. You're like, good. In fact, I hope you prove yourself correct. I would love for there to be 3 moons. Like, how very interesting. That's an interesting idea. It's an interesting take. Okay. So when a negative thought appears in your mind, that neutral position is what we want to take toward it. Because the presence of the negative thought is not the problem. It's when we either believe it or fight with it or withdraw from it or grapple with it. That's what perpetuates the presence of that negative thought in our mind. That's the crucial insight. And so therefore, what we want to do is we want to learn how to be neutral towards a negative thought. This is what we learn from Matt Kahn, the spiritual speaker, who will say things like, thank you for letting me know. This is what we also learn from Access Consciousness, Dane here, who says that's an interesting point of view. So if a negative thought shows up in your mind that says, I'm garbage, I'm worthless, nobody loves me, as we established in step 3, it's wrong. So you can see the importance now of having done step 3. We can't advance unless step 3 is done, which is to say this thought is wrong. I know it's wrong. And so now with that knowing, with that established, step 4 is to look at that thought and say, thank you. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for telling me that I'm worthless. Thank you for telling me nobody loves me. Thank you for telling me I'm a piece of shit. That is fascinating. What an interesting point of view. Thank you for your good intentions behind telling me, because the good intention behind your mind is, well, you need to look at the negative stuff so that you are aware of it, so that you're ready when the bad thing comes, right? Because as we established in step 2, there's always a justification for negative psychology. Notice, by the way, how there's no justification required for positive psychology, for a loving statement. We don't need to say I love you to yourself or to somebody else requires no explanation or justification, but negative psychology does. So we say to that negative justification, thank you. I see that your intention is to protect me. I see that your intention is to take care of me. I see that your intention is to inform me. Thank you for your good intentions. And so by offering that gratitude and that neutral curiosity to the negative psychology, it doesn't get rid of the negative psychology right away, but it does something more important. It cuts off its power source. It cuts off its momentum, because the momentum came from reacting against. And so now that we're no longer reacting against, and that negative thought is permitted to exist in our mind, there's nothing left to do. There's nothing left to do. And now that momentum is finally, for the first time, permitted to run itself out. Negative thought never goes away in a blaze of glory. There's no triumphing of the positive psychology over the negative psychology. Instead, it just goes away out the back door unnoticed. You wake up years down the line and realize, oh man, I'm just not so mean to myself anymore. That's cool, because you stopped making such a big deal out of it. That's the missing piece. That's what to do about negative psychology. Let's run through this one more time super quick to drive this all in. Whatever you offer to yourself is offered back to you. It's not 2, it's not 1. Your mind is not an asshole to you, and you are just receiving what you give to yourself. And if you give yourself anything negative, number 2, it's because you feel like you should, and we want to get to the bottom of what that reasoning is. Number 3, that reasoning is wrong, and we don't have to apply any aggression to it. We don't need to debate. It's just enough to know that it's wrong. And then number 4 is knowing that it's wrong. you let it play itself out in gratitude and in love. If you're interested in the one-on-one work, check out a link in the description. Please hit like on the video if you did indeed like it, and subscribe so we can go on this journey together to become more conscious, self-development, to actualize our potential, and to evolve into greater versions of ourselves. I'll catch you on the next one.